Hi, I'm Christian, and I have a question for you. Have any of you, when you were really young, done something you thought was super special to surprise someone you cared about? I can remember when I was young, my dad and we would always make a really nice breakfast for my mom on Mother's Day. We'd have waffles and fruit and icing sugar, and it was mostly for my mom, but I enjoyed it too. The reason I share this is because I realized that even simple acts of love can have a huge impact on someone's life. Let's check out today's God story, and we'll see where Timothy, who was quite a young guy, gets instructions to pray for others, and that would greatly impact them.
Did you know? Tigers have striped skin, not just striped fur. Hey everyone, I'm Karmyn. Isn't it fun to get a special note from someone? Maybe it's an email or a text message. It's always fun to get letters. And when I was in university, we used to get letters in the mail. And I remember one day walking to my mailbox and looking for mail. And not only did I have a letter one day, I had a package, which is extra exciting. And I realized it was from my mom and dad. And guess what was inside? Homemade cookies. Ooh. And it was really good because it reminded me that my mom and dad loved me, missed me. Plus, I got to eat yummy cookies that day. Today's God story actually comes out of a letter that we have in the Bible. It's called 1 Timothy, and it was written by a guy named Paul. He was an apostle, and he loved to share the good news of Jesus with everyone all over the place. Now, the letter that he wrote was to Timothy, who was a young follower of Jesus. But before we get too far into that, I want to share with you today's big idea. Even though we're young, we can pray for everyone. Now, you might have an idea where Paul's letter is going, but let me just share this with you. 1 Timothy is a book of the Bible in the New Testament. And Paul writes 2 letters to Timothy, and they come right after 1st and 2nd Thessalonians. So like I said, Paul the Apostle wrote this letter to Timothy, who he calls a true son in the faith. So it's kind of like Paul is a spiritual dad to Timothy. Think about it this way. Paul is a guy who knows so much about Jesus, and he really wants to share and teach this message to Timothy. So Paul starts this letter to Timothy with kind of a welcome and a blessing. Let me read that for you. May God the Father and Christ Jesus our Lord give you grace and mercy and peace. Isn't that nice? And then he goes on to give Timothy some specific instructions to stay in the city of Ephesus and help to correct some people who were sharing a message that just wasn't true about God. Paul tells Timothy that love is the whole point of his teaching and instruction, and love comes from a pure heart. Love is what helps us know what is right and what is wrong. True teaching tells about the good news of Jesus. And you see, Paul really wants Timothy to understand that the good news message is all about Jesus. And then Paul writes this, and I want to read it for you out of 1 Timothy chapter 2. First, I want you to pray for all people. Ask God to help and bless them. Give thanks for them. Pray for kings. Pray for everyone who is in authority. Pray that we can live peaceful and quiet lives, and pray that we will be godly and holy. First, pray for all people. I know that sounds simple, but it's something we can all do. And even if you feel like you're too young, you're never too young to pray. And when we're praying for people, it's actually really hard to be mad or annoyed with them. And further, we're supposed to give thanks for them. When we're thankful for people, it's even harder to be mad at them. Then Paul goes on to tell Timothy to pray for kings, or in our case, a ruler of any kind. A mayor, a senator, president, prime minister, you get the idea. Even if we don't agree with their ideas or the way they do things, we can still pray for them, and we can pray that God will help direct them in the choices they make and in the way they live their lives. Then Paul also tells Timothy this: pray that we can live peaceful and quiet lives, and that we will be godly and holy and make good choices. These are fantastic things to pray. I don't know about you, but this is teaching me a lot about the things that I can start to be praying about. This is great letter writing, Paul. Then Paul gives instruction to men and women about not being angry, and about not caring so much about what clothes they should wear. He writes this to them: instead, they should put on good works as if good works were their clothes. Paul then goes on to say that if you want to be a leader in the church, you should focus on doing good works for God and for other people. This sounds kind of like Jesus, doesn't it? Love God and love your neighbor. Paul then goes on to give other instructions about how to be a good leader in the church. And then he ends this part of the letter with something really cool. It sounds like a cool poem or prayer. In fact, it was a special song called a hymn. Jesus came as a human being. The Holy Spirit proved that he was the Son of God. He was seen by angels. He was preached among the nations. People in the world believed in him. He was taken up to heaven in glory. This song, it's a clear reminder of who Jesus is and what he did. Paul might have included it to remind Timothy of the message of who Jesus is. For whatever reason, it's how chapter 3 ends, and it's a beautiful reminder. So in this first letter to Timothy, Paul makes a whole bunch of points. The first big one is that Jesus and the message of Jesus is what it's all about. And the second thing we're focusing on today is that prayer is super important. And it doesn't matter how old or how young you are never too young to pray. And that's today's big idea. Even though we're young, we can pray for everyone. Well, guys, it's been so fun being with you. I'll see you soon.
Hey friends, turn to the person next to you
and answer the following questions before the time runs out.
Question time!
Who was like a spiritual dad to Timothy? Who are some people you can pray for?
Game time! Candy Chaos. How many times can you say the key verse before things get messy? Say it with me.
Don't let anyone look down on you because you are young. Set an example for the believers in what you say and in how you live. Also set an example in how you love and in what you believe. 1 Timothy 4, verse 12.
Get ready. 3, 2, 1, go!
As you've heard, today's big idea is, even though we're young, we can pray for everyone. Paul didn't ask Timothy whether he thinks he's old enough or qualified enough to be helpful. He simply said, pray. Pray for all people. There are many things in life where we have to be qualified for a specific task. Some tasks we have to be tall enough to take something off a shelf, or we need to be strong enough to carry a heavy object, or we need to know enough about certain things to be able to work with them safely. But when it comes to loving the way Jesus does, we simply need to be willing to do that. Let's watch this.
Hi, I'm Lydia. Daddy said we could play video games, but it's on top of the cabinet. I want to open this. I can't get it. Safe. I can't reach it.
Hi friends, my name is Paige, and as you've just seen, there are moments in life when it is simply impossible to do a specific task. It may be that we're too short and need to grow taller before we can reach something, or we might not be strong enough to do a specific task and we need to grow older and stronger muscles before we can do what we want to do. And sometimes we simply have to come up with a creative way to get the job done. But do you know there's one thing where age or height or strength doesn't matter? One thing that we can all do? That is to pray. Well, I invited my friend Anlay to share with us about a time she prayed for someone close to her. Hi Anlay, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
So I understand that one time there was someone really close to you who got hurt pretty bad. Can you tell me about that?
Yes. So, my Uncle Yappy and his dog, Sheena, were taking walk in the woods, and his foot got stuck, and he tripped and broke his leg.
Oh no, that's horrible. Well, was there anything you were able to do even though he hurt himself?
Yes, I prayed for him every night. I visited him. I kept him company. We played some board games.
Yep.
Yeah.
That sounds so fun. That's amazing that you did that. That you were able to show him love in such a practical way. Because even though maybe he couldn't go out and see you, you still came to him, which was so, so important. We see that in the Bible too, when Paul told Timothy to pray for all people, and that no one should look down on him because he is young. We checked in with a few other friends, Oliver, Isaac, and Lydia, and we asked them what they think prayer is, and asked them to share a bit on who they pray for. Let's check in on them.
Prayer is talking to God. Prayer is when you talk to Jesus. That Jesus can help me. If I think about something that's scary and it doesn't go away, then I just pray to God, and then I sleep better. That people can get better. One time I was sick and I prayed and I was sick and I threw up and my ear hurted, and I prayed that I would stop throwing up, and I did. In the Bible, someone prayed that someone would get better, and they did.
Did you get what Oliver said? That prayer is when you talk to Jesus. That is how simple it is. We can all talk to Jesus, and we can talk to him about everything. We don't have to be a specific age or use specific words or have specific qualifications when we pray. Praying is sharing what is on our hearts with Jesus. I had an experience with this a while ago when I started to look at universities. There was a lot of confusion that came with that because I didn't know what school I wanted to go to, what program I wanted to go into, and I knew my friends were struggling with this a lot too. So what I did was I reached out to my parents, to teachers, to my friends, and of course to God. I was praying to him every single night about direction and wisdom, and he provided that for me. So then I submitted an application to the universities and I started to wait. I was checking every single night for acceptances to the universities, and I was praying a lot because there was so much worry. And I knew my friends were going through that worry as well. And then finally, a few weeks later, I got my very first acceptance to the school of my choice, and I was so grateful and so excited. And luckily, a lot of my friends got that too, and we were all so excited. But there are still some friends who are waiting, and so of course we're praying for them a lot right now as well. When we're younger, we sometimes feel shy or that we're too young to pray for other people. But as I got older, I realized that I sometimes still feel that way. But listening to our friends today, I think it's clear. If we have a relationship with Jesus, we have everything we need to pray for others. We can pray for our friends and family, for our leaders, for people who are sick or who are struggling, and we can pray for wisdom and direction, and we can thank God for all the good things we see and the answers we know we will get. Today, I want to greet you with what Paul said. Don't let anyone look down on you because you are young. Well, until next time, we'll see you soon. Bye!
Wow, prayer is something super special and it's so powerful. It's a precious part of our relationship with Jesus and a time where we get to talk to him, share our concerns, and celebrate all the good we receive from him. We don't need to be a certain age to pray or use specific words or have specific knowledge about life or important matters. No matter how old we are or how young we are, we can pray for other people, knowing that God hears every word and he sees our hearts. Let's break into our small groups now and we'll see what this looks like in our lives. Bye.